Before Abraham was, I am. Now, trying to make this verse about the Trinity causes you to miss the truth and beauty behind the verse.
I say if the Lord willing, then it's time. Let's get edified. Faith like Abraham, so you know I'm justified. That's the first step, then after that you realize that faith without works is dead. It's time to come alive.
John 8:56-58. Your father, Abraham, rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then the Jews said unto him, Thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? Note, Christ never said he seen Abraham. Verse 58. Christ said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. Now let's hop to Genesis and read on Abraham. Genesis 15:5. And he took him outside and said, the Most High, Now look towards the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he said to him, So shall your descendants be. So here, Abraham believed in what the Most High said. This is what Abraham saw and was glad. And I'll prove that in a minute. But remember, faith is evidence of things not seen physically. So now, let's jump to the book of Hebrews to validate what Abraham saw. Hebrews 11:13. And this is speaking on Abraham, Sarah, etc. It says, All these died in faith without receiving the promise, pay attention, but having seen through faith, through the Spirit, they seen and welcomed them from a distance. Abraham seen Christ's day through faith and believing in the Most High's promise. And through Christ, Abraham's promise came to fruition. A lot of people nowadays read and don't connect these dots because they are fluttered with false doctrines and can't make these beautiful connections through the Spirit. Now let's go back to John 8:57. The Jews said Christ claimed he seen Abraham. Now, Christ never said that. Pharisees, they did not understand anything Christ said. That's why they wrongly accused Christ of saying he was God or equal to the Most High God. But we'll cover that in the next video. So we're going to overlook the whole Pharisees encounter. Through the Spirit, we see clearly, right? So verse 56 and 58. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. Glad to see the promise through faith. That's the context. Hebrews 11:13. Then Christ said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was. Was in the Greek means to become, to come into being, to happen, to be made, to be done. So what is the context? It's what Abraham seen, and it was the promise. So before Abraham's promise to become, to come into being, to happen, to be made, to be done, Christ then says, I am. In the Greek, this means I exist. Trinitarians overlook this beautiful passage because they want people to worship their triune God. But what is really being said? What does the word clearly teach? It teaches that Abraham's promise was fulfilled through Christ. So thinking biblically, we can make sense of this beautiful verse. So before Abraham's promise to become, to come into being, to happen, to be made, to be done, I am, which means to be, to exist, to happen, to be present. Christ is saying he has to be, to exist, to happen, to be present for Abraham's promise to come into being. So Christ said, before Abraham's promise comes into being, I have to exist. And we know through the Spirit, Christ made Abraham's promise possible, right? Now, this passage is really powerful, one of my favorites, with the proper understanding. Like, I know this wasn't a quiet conversation. Like, we see the fake image of Christ, and we have this picture in our head that he's just a soft-spoken, quiet person. But I know the Messiah was sounding like a trumpet, like a lion, full of passion, like letting them know, y'all brag about being Abraham's son, and he would disown y'all. I'm God's son. And Abraham's promise requires me to exist. Get the stones! And that's all I have for this video. God bless and remember, Think like the few, not like the many.